One of the worst feelings is when you find something laying around the house that you really never use, and you decide to give that to somebody. You just give that as a gift to somebody, only to find out that they were the ones who gave it to you in the first place. That is a terrible moment in time. Not a good feeling at all. I don't know who's ever done that. Everybody just nod your head no. Like, that happens to other people. That's legend, but never happens to us. That is a feeling. It creates one of those awkward moments that we try to avoid in our life. Nobody's really looking for the awkward moments, but that creates one instantly. Like, here, I got this for you. Nope, I got that for you. Flip it over. To you from me. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess you did give that to me. That's when it hits you and it's awkward. And like, okay, so they're selling it with our names on the bottom of it now, from you to me, and like, there's no way out. It's that awkward moment. You're stuck there, and there's no wiggle room. You just realize, I apparently don't want this. You gave it to me. I apparently don't want it anymore, and now I'm investing in your life with the same gift you invested in my life with. So there's no wiggle room. There's no way to get out of that. It's just awkward. Well, there is someone in the Bible who loved this kind of gift. Loved this kind of gift. In 1 Chronicles, David is providing everything he can for the building of the temple. He is pouring himself into the building of the temple. His son Solomon is the one that God said would build the temple, even though David was the one who desperately wanted to build the temple. David, with all his heart, he wanted to build a temple for God. But God said, no, it'll be Solomon. It'll be your son that builds the temple. David had wanted to build a temple for God long before Solomon was even born, but his plans were vetoed by God. God said, no, you're not going to build it. It's going to be your son. And this is the reason God gave David for not allowing him to take on this task. God says, you're not going to build the temple, and this is the reason he gave David for not allowing him to do it. Look at 1 Chronicles 22 and verse 8. It says, you have shed much blood and have made great wars. You shall not build a house for my name, because you have shed much blood on the earth in my sight. Behold, a son shall be born to you, who shall be a man of rest, and I will give him rest from all his enemies all around. His name shall be Solomon, for I will give peace and quietness to Israel in his days. He shall build a house for my name. David had a reputation of being a man of war. David was known for being a man of war. When he became king, there was a lot of chaos that had to be addressed. The Philistine army, you go back to when he was 17 years old, the David and Goliath story, there was a lot. When David comes onto the scene, we see that he is dealing with conflict constantly. Many battles were sitting before him, and he had to take care of that. And he became a king that other nations feared. People looked at King David and like, don't approach him. Just don't get near him, because he will wipe us out. He was known for being a man of war. And God clearly had his back when it came to defending Israel's enemies. God blessed David constantly. But the temple represented something different. It was a place of peace and reconciliation. War wasn't the image you want to build something like that on. So God says, no, David, you've got too much war, you've got too much conflict that your life is saturated with. I'm going to give this task to your son, Solomon, who will be an image of peace. That's the one that's going to build the temple. When we reach chapter 29, we see David pouring himself into this project. Solomon's in charge of building the temple, but David couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Remember, it's David's passion. He wanted to build the temple in the first place. He wanted to be invested in this, and God says, no, not you, him. So what David does is he just clocks out and says, oh, fine, I'll just go sit over here. No, he says, maybe I can't build it, but I will be involved. I'm going to invest myself in it. He had to be involved, so he did the one thing he could do. David decides to give gifts. This was an area he could invest in. I'm going to give gifts. The Bible says that he gave thousands of talents of gold, silver, and bronze. He gave precious stones and iron for the construction of the building, and he encouraged other people to get behind the cause also. That's the part David could have in it. Maybe I can't build it, but I'm still going to be involved. I'm still going to pour myself into this. The people of Israel came together to achieve one of the greatest building accomplishments of all time. The temple wasn't completed in this chapter. It's not going to be finished in this chapter, and it wasn't even completed in the lifetime of David. David didn't even see this temple in its completion. The people just provided the building materials to get the job done. That's all that's going on in chapter 29, is the building project, the building materials are coming in. But a celebration does take place in this chapter, and the reason for the celebration is awesome. So look at 1 Chronicles chapter 29 and verse 9. Then the people rejoiced, for they had offered willingly, because with a loyal heart they had offered willingly to the Lord, and King David also rejoiced greatly. They weren't celebrating because of how much was brought in. That's not what's going on. They're not celebrating because there's a lot of stuff brought in. They weren't even celebrating because anything was completed, because nothing was completed. There's nothing finished in this. They were celebrating because they gave willingly from their hearts. They did it with loyal hearts towards God. That is why they're celebrating. It says the people rejoiced, for they had offered willingly. That's the only reason we have for the celebration. And by the way, I know French fries are popping up on the screen behind us here, okay? And I'm going to address that right now, because every time a verse comes up, you smile, and it's not because you're happy to see the verse. You're not distracting me anymore. The French fries are on the screen. I get that. Be overjoyed that there are French fries on the screen. We'll get to that. I promise. I wasn't desperate for a background, like, I'm out of time. It'll be French fries. There's a purpose for that. So now we can all get past the French fries on the screen, and we can focus on the verse in front of the French fries. Are we all on the same page here? We're good? I know online they're going to see the same thing. It's going to pop up when they're watching online. Like, why are there French fries on the screen? It's coming. It's coming. I will address that. The people are celebrating, and it's not over French fries. The people are celebrating because they had an opportunity to give with a loyal heart, with a willing heart. That is why they're celebrating. Nothing's being accomplished. There's nothing being built. They're not looking at, oh, look how much money we raised, or look how much has been brought in. That's worth celebrating. That new number, it keeps going up. That's worth celebrating. They're not celebrating that. They're celebrating because they offered willingly. That's all it says the celebration's for, because they offered willingly. A party's taking place because they understood what was going on and they did it right. That is why they're celebrating. Have you ever done something with such a pure heart that you became filled with joy? Have you ever done something like that? Maybe around Christmas time, you made Christmas special for a family that didn't have money. You know that feeling? If you've ever done it, it is incredible. When you decide to pour into somebody's life, you see that person that brings all the stuff to the register at the store, and they're like, that'll be this much, and they, okay, we're going to need to take some of that stuff away because I just don't have enough to cover it. And you step up and go, I'll pay the difference. I'll go ahead and pay the difference. What's that do inside of you? That is an awesome moment right there. And what did you get out of it? Nothing. They're not going to give you anything. They're not going to say, well, let me split this with you. You're not going home with any of the stuff you just paid for. Nothing. You just pour into that moment, and they might give you a hug, they might say thank you, and you just, you're welcome. And then they leave and you never see them again. But as you're driving home, you just want to live that moment every day of your life. You just want to relive that moment. You might have helped somebody at some point that was having a difficult time and they could not help themselves. And even though you get nothing in return, you feel like you wish you could experience that all the time. That moment right there. Man, I wish I could live in that moment right there, because that feels amazing. These people didn't contribute under duress. Nobody was pressuring these people to give. They're just bringing stuff in and giving it for the building of the temple. And now they're celebrating. Why? Because of that moment right there. They're celebrating because of what that feels like. We are investing in God. Man, that's incredible. He didn't even ask us to. He didn't demand anything of us. We're doing this out of our love for God, and that is incredible. That's an awesome feeling. So a party starts. They are celebrating, not because anything's happening, but because they're investing in God. That moment right there, they're living in that moment, and they're celebrating. They got behind this out of their love for God and their desire to make an impact for God. That is all the celebration is for. This generation got it. They understood their impact and what they could contribute to the generation coming up. They understood, if I make an impact right now, that's going to invest in the generation coming up, and we get to pour into God right now, that's amazing. They weren't going to let their lives go by without leaving a mark that significantly influenced the world for God. It's going to be said that our generation did something. We're not coming on the scene and passing off the scene without there being a memory that we did something while we walked this earth. When we existed, we poured into God, and it's going to be recorded somewhere that we poured into God, and we're reading the record of that today. We got it, guys. You did well. You did well. Why were you partying? Because we did well. We poured into Him. Their short time in history was going to be used as a memorial to the greatness of God. Like, we're going to pour into this. But as all of this was going on, David caught on to one thing that we may miss here, but David did not miss it. He caught on to the fact that everybody was regifting. Every single person in this story was regifting. Look at 1 Chronicles 29 and verse 13. Now therefore, our God, we thank you and praise your glorious name. But who am I and who are my people, that we should be able to offer so willingly as this? For all things come from you, and of your own we have given you. That's kind of a huge thing to recognize. All things come from you, and of your own we have given you. Where'd you get all the stuff? Well, He gave it to us. Who are you giving it to? Him. Isn't that called regifting? Absolutely. That is what's going on here. David catches on to the fact that everybody is regifting. David came to the realization that everything they were given is now being given to God, who originally provided it for them. Like, oh, wait a second. We're only giving you what's already yours. You gave it to us, and now we're giving it back to you. They were regifting, and God was loving it. God loves what's going on here. His people were so wrapped up in the excitement of giving to the Lord that they were going above and beyond anything they had ever done before. I heard once, I've not done the statistics myself, I've not done the research myself, nor am I going to. I'm just going to give you what somebody else did. The amount that they gave, if you were to take that and compare it to today's currency, would be the equivalent of $21 billion worth of gold and silver and bronze and iron. And not only that, but they gave animals for sacrifice and all that. That's a big gift. That is a big gift. These people didn't stop. They continued to pour into this. They were honored to be part of what God was doing, and they were glad that they had something to offer God. Hey, we have something, guys. We can pour into this. And David poured a lot of it of his own stash, not just these people, but everybody's involved in this. God had blessed Israel with so many physical blessings on top of the fact that He made them a people that He called His own. You are my people, and here's some blessings, and they couldn't get over it. God is good. God is so good. We have everything we have because God gave it to us, and now we're going to use those same things for God. We're going to regift it. We're going to pour it right back into Him. When the opportunity came to regift, they were all in. Like, wait a second, what are we doing? We're going to build a house for God. Hey, I happen to have some stuff, and I want to pour that into what God's doing. Eventually, the temple was completed, and to this day, it is spoken of being one of the greatest accomplishments of all time. Solomon's temple, nothing's ever compared. One of the greatest accomplishments of all time. But I don't want to overlook the other great accomplishment that was taking place at this time. David was a great man. Many people have a difficult time getting past of his sin of adultery. They get stuck on that part of David's life. We see what he did, and we get stuck there. But God spoke of David like this. Look at Acts 13 and verse 22. I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. God's forgiveness is an amazing attribute. God speaks of sin as the need for forgiveness, his sin. I see your sin, and there's a need for forgiveness here. But when God spoke of David being a man after his own heart, it was because of how he lived when he wasn't yielding to sinful thoughts. It was how David had a good heart. Did he stumble in many ways just like we all do? Yes, he did. And a lot of times we can't forgive David even though we know God did, because that was a big event. That was a huge event. But God says he's a man after my own heart. See, David was a child of God, and David was a man who truly loved the Lord. The greatest accomplishment I see taking place in 1 Chronicles chapter 29 is the fact that this man led so many people to give willingly out of their love for God. That is a huge accomplishment. That kind of contribution, who got that ball rolling? David did. David did. David set an example that is very rarely brought up. First part of the example that he gave. If you're going to give anything to God, it's going to have to be because you regifted it. That's the only way you're going to ever give anything to God. Think about that. If you're ever going to do anything or give anything to God, it's because you regifted it. That's how you got it. Is because God was so good to you. Yeah, but what if I do it? What if I make it for him and I do it of my own abilities? Where'd you get those abilities? Who gave you the ability to do that? God. Who created you in the first place? God. Anything you ever give God is because you regifted it. And David understood that. That's the first idea that we've got to wrap our minds around. If I'm going to give anything, you know that money that we throw in the offering plate? Where'd you get it? God gave it to me. What, you didn't want it? You didn't like that gift, so you regifted it? No, I enjoyed that. Why do we give it? Why does God tell us to give? Well, how does he tell us to give? Under duress. I want you to give it because I said to, and I'm going to push you under my thumb, and I need that dollar more than you do, and I'm pressed for cash. So I need you to give. Is that why we give? No. God tells us to give because, or how does God tell us to give? Willingly, just like the people did here. Not of necessity. Not grudgingly, like, well, fine, I'll give. Not like that. You don't give like that. How's he want you to give? Cheerfully. Well, do you need it? No, you do. You need the giving to happen because then you recognize the relationship. I want you to invest in what I'm doing. And that's how I want you to be willing to do that. I want you to give like that. We often view this life as ours, but it's so much more than that. God created you intentionally, and he designed you specifically. In my office, there is a frame, a picture frame. There's a verse in a picture frame as a reminder to me all the time. This verse applies to your life just as easily as it applies to my life. And this is the verse that's in that frame, Jeremiah chapter 1 and verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Now, this verse is God referring to Jeremiah the prophet, but that same God created me, and that same God created you. And he didn't have plans for Jeremiah, and for the rest of us, he's just winging it. You know, he has a plan for you too. He has a plan for me too. Before you were born, he knew you, and he set you apart. He has a purpose for your life too. This isn't just about Jeremiah. God is personally invested in who you are. He's personally invested in who I am. He watches as you make your choices from day to day. And he notices when you get so caught up in everything around you that you rarely consider him in your decisions. He sees that, and he patiently waits and loves you. Boy, they're distracted again. They completely forgot about me. You want to smash them? No. I want to love them, and I will wait, and I will watch them grow, and I will help them grow, because I'm not willing that any should perish. I want a relationship with these people. That's why I poured so much into this. Why would I smite them? Why would I do that? No, I'll be patient, and I'll watch them, and I'll let them grow. Just because he has plans for you doesn't mean that he forces you to do them. Just because he has a purpose for you doesn't mean he's over there making it happen. God set you apart before you were ever born. He provided you with a life full of blessings. Think about your life right now. And maybe somebody else has more things than you have, or more. You might say, well, they're blessed more than I am. Well, how do you know that? How do you know that? Maybe you don't own a house, or maybe you're struggling because you got to replace your transmission in your car every week, and you're like, this is a real struggle. I'm not blessed at all. But that person that's got so much, they have health issues that they can't get past. But you're perfectly healthy. Which blessing? How do you rank those? How do you rank those? We can't look at somebody else and say, oh, you're blessed more than I am. No, you're blessed, and so am I. We're all blessed. We're all blessed. He's given you abilities and possessions, and he's equipped you with everything you need. Somebody else might have more than you, but you still have everything you need. If you're going to give to God willingly from your heart, you have to realize that it was only made possible because he gave it to you first. We have to understand that. David said, of your own we have given you. He caught on to that. But David realized something else. God didn't give us anything with strings attached. I'm going to give this to you, so you will give it back to me. He didn't give anything to us like that. That's not the way he gave it to us. I really want that, so I'm going to give it to you so you can give it back to me, and then we're good. That's not how he gives things. He gives it willingly also. It's not that there's strings attached. He gave us life, abilities, blessings, salvation with no conditions. No conditions. So what do I need to do to earn my salvation? Absolutely nothing. You just need to accept the gift. You just need to accept the gift. There's no strings attached. I did everything so you could have everything. No strings attached. I just love you, and I give you willingly. It wasn't a loan. The things that you have, that's not a loan. God didn't give you a loan. It was a gift from the goodness of God, and that's why you have those things. In that case, it isn't just of his own that we give him. It's also sacrificial on our parts, because it is ours to give, because he did give it to us with no strings attached. David was the kind of leader who practiced what he preached. He wasn't just telling people what to do, he was doing it himself. He led by example even when it involved personal sacrifice. In chapter 21, long before the time where the people gave willingly, long before chapter 29, David found a piece of land that he wanted to purchase for the purpose of building an altar to God. He asks a man named Ornan to sell the land to him, and this was Ornan's response. Look at chapter 21 and verse 23. But Ornan said to David, "Take it to yourself, and let my lord the king do what is good in his eyes. Look, I also give you the oxen for burnt offerings, the threshing implements for wood, and the wheat for a grain offering. I give it all. David, you can have it." You want to build an altar to God? I'll get behind that. You can just have it, David. Ornan wanted to offer kindness to David by giving him everything free of charge. But even though David most likely appreciated the gesture, he wasn't willing to accept the offer. Nope, it can't happen that way. David had a strong sense of personal involvement when it came to serving the Lord. He needed to know that he invested personally into his worship. Look at how David handled the situation. He didn't rebuke Ornan for the offer, and he didn't act offended in any way. He led by example and explained the importance behind his refusal to accept the land. I cannot accept it, and he wanted him to know why. Look at verse 24. Then King David said to Ornan, "No, but I will surely buy it for the full price. For I will not take what is yours for the Lord, nor offer burnt offerings with that which costs me nothing." So David gave Ornan 600 shekels of gold by weight for the place. David wasn't willing to make an altar off of somebody else's sacrifice. No, I need to be personally invested. I must be personally invested. An investment was going to be made on his part one way or another. Nope, it's going to be from me. It's going to be from my heart willingly, not from your heart willingly. So David purchases the property with his own money. What he didn't know was this same piece of land that he bought was the land that his son was eventually going to build the temple on. I just want to build an altar to God. Well, build it. But when he bought that land, later on, his son was going to build the temple on that same piece of property. We see this unfold in 2 Chronicles. Look at 2 Chronicles 3 and verse 1. Now Solomon began to build the house of the Lord at Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord had appeared to his father David, at the place that David had prepared on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. David may not have ever seen the temple built, but he personally invested his life into what God was doing. And because of him, Solomon had everything he needed to accomplish the task. The first thing we have to understand is that if we have it, it's because God has provided us with it. That is why you have it. The second thing is that it is now ours to regift. It's now you have an opportunity to regift it. Years ago, I shared this illustration that I want to share again, and also we'll put this French fry thing behind. This is the illustration, okay? I want to share this. Years ago, I was sitting in a sermon, and I was listening to this preacher preach. I couldn't tell you his name. I couldn't tell you where I was, anything, but I do remember the illustration. It was huge. He said, a grandpa felt overwhelmed with the love that he had for his granddaughter, and he decided to buy her a treat. You grandparents understand how that works. Do they need it? Nope. Are they going to get it? Absolutely. Can I afford it? It doesn't matter. Look at those eyes. So this grandfather says, I love her so much, and I just want to give her a treat. Not because she deserves it or anything, just because I love her. So he drove to McDonald's. Here we go. Here's French fry application. He drives to McDonald's and he buys her a large order of French fries because she loves the fries. That's her go-to item of food. She loves French fries. And she accepted the treat and said thank you to him. A little while later, they're driving down the road and she's just munching on those French fries. She's just eating them. And he looks over and says, hey, could I get one of those French fries? And she said, no. These are my fries. These are my fries. And he said, but you wouldn't have those fries if I wouldn't have bought those for you. So can I have fries? I would like fries. And she said, you should have bought fries. I don't know if that grandfather ever got to taste one of those fries. I have no idea. I don't know what happened in that person's life, but I'll never forget the illustration that it was pointing to, the message it was pointing to. I was very young when I heard this for the first time. I mean, I'm still very young. I was very younger. I was very younger when I heard that illustration for the first time. After I learned to apply that picture to my life, I began to see verses like this next one in a different way. In this verse, Moses has died, and Joshua has taken the leadership role. Look at what God says to Joshua. Joshua chapter 1 and verse 3. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, as I said to Moses. Why did God feel like it was his place to give that land away? How is it your place to give him that land? It was mine to give. It was mine to give. Everything we have has been given to us by God. Think about it. Soak it up. Take that in. Everything you have has been given to you by God. In that verse, you say, how does that even fit the context of the sermon? It fits really well. It says, hey, everywhere your foot touches, I'm going to give you that land. And what gives you the right to give it? It's mine. It's mine. Everything you have, I give to you willingly. And then you say, and now it's mine. He says, hey, could I use some of that? You should have got your own. Should have got your own. Hey, could you give a little extra for this cause here? Because I love what's going on here. Could you give a little extra? No, these are my fries. These are mine. If you wanted fries, you probably should have ordered yourself some fries. Do we see the picture? We do it all the time. We do it all the time. God says, hey, can I use your abilities? No, these are my abilities. Can I have a little time? No, this is my time. Hey, so-and-so could use some help right now. They should have ordered their own help. because this is my time, this is my life, these are my abilities, these are my finances, these are my possessions, those are my tools. I have worked with people before that I had to go home and get my tools even though they had the tools I could use right where they were. Like, hey, could I use that saw? No, I'm really kind of protective about the saw. Like, okay, well, I'll just stare it down and cut it with my eyes. I had to go home and get my own tools because they were protective about a possession. And we were helping somebody else, but I wasn't allowed to use the same tools. That's the mindset we get in so many times when it comes to God. You should have got your own fries, God. You should have got your own fries. And we think of that illustration, we're like, yeah, we're not like that. Oh, yeah, we are. We are so like that. Regifting is happening everywhere in this story in 1 Chronicles. There's a lot of regifting happening here. And when we finally grasp the fact that our life consists of the goodness of God, we begin to see things differently. We have everything we have because God gave it to us. We are able to do what we do because God enabled us to do it. But sometimes God says, can I have some of those fries? And we hold them really tight and we say, nope, these are my fries. These are my fries. Two things David learned, and there are two things that will transform our lives if we will learn them. If we will lock this in, if we will grasp this idea, it will transform your life. Let's look at these two verses again. 1 Chronicles 29:14 and 1 Chronicles 21:24. For all things come from you, and of your own we have given you. And the second one is, I will not offer with that which costs me nothing. The only reason we have fries is because God was good enough to give them to us out of His love, and He gave them to you willingly. That is the only reason you have what you have in your life. That means out of our love and gratitude for Him, somehow, somewhere, we should be sharing that with Him. Why wouldn't we share it with Him? That little girl should have got her fries and was like, do you want some, Grandpa? That should have been the first move. Would you like some of these? No, it's his choice now. But the first thing she should have done was like, would you like some of these? That would have been the right move. We don't make that. We don't make that move. We don't do that. We hold tightly to that box of fries. God says, hey, could I use some of that? Nope. These are mine. Where'd you get them? You gave them to me. Maybe it's a good time to regift. Maybe we could regift here. He has blessed us all more than we ever deserved. And it's time to regift some of those blessings for every one of us. Every one of us. It is time to regift. And it is time in your life to regift, and it is time in my life to regift. It may be your time, it might be your money, it might be your abilities, your possessions. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. If you have it, it's because He provided it for you. He is the reason why you have it. God loves it when we regift what He has given to us. He loves the regifting thing. And just in case there's any kind of questions or misunderstandings about this sermon, this is not a sermon about money. This is not a sermon about money. This is a sermon about gratitude and love. That is what this is. It's not a sermon about money. Everything you have is because God gave it to you. If this was about money, I would probably, put a dollar sign on the screen rather than French fries. The idea is gratitude and living a life out of love. That is what this is about. What would happen if we looked at our possessions? When we looked at our possessions, we saw God's goodness rather than our possessions. What would happen if we changed the way we looked at it? When you get out there after church and you go to your car and you see that, do you see it as your car? Or do you take a minute and say, that's the goodness of God right there. That is why I have that. When you turn that key and that needle goes up to half a tank of gas, do you see it as half a tank of gas? Or do you see it as the goodness of God? How do you see it? What would happen if we, instead of seeing our possessions as possessions, we saw them as the goodness of God? What if we saw our opportunities to pour into God rather than opportunities to gain temporary things or recognition in life? Hey, it's another chance. I have another chance to pour into him. So often we acknowledge God on such a basic level. What if we saw him as the forefront of all of our blessings rather than making him an afterthought? What would happen in our life? How would it change our life if we saw everything that we have as the goodness of God rather than possessions or things? What would happen? God, thank you for my food. Because there's so many people out there right now who don't have any food. So thank you for my food. What would happen if we looked at it that way? Thank you, because there's people that are without right now. Thank you for my home, because the homeless do exist, and you provided it so I'm not in that situation myself. Thank you for the goodness of God. Thank you for my warmth, for the air conditioning, for the cool air, because there's so many people who suffer out in the elements every day. Thank you for the air conditioning, for the warmth in my house. Thank you for the comforts in life. Wouldn't it be amazing to have a celebration for the same reason the Israelites did? Wouldn't it be amazing if we had a party, not because of how much we brought in, or not because of what was built or what was accomplished, but because of the same reason they had a celebration? Look at the verse in 1 Chronicles 29 one more time, and then I'll close. 1 Chronicles 29 and verse 9. Then the people rejoiced, for they had offered willingly, because with a loyal heart they had offered willingly to the Lord. And King David also rejoiced greatly. This only happens when we finally learn the lessons that David learned. That's when it's going to happen. Maybe we should all start getting excited about the prospects of regifting. Maybe that should be exciting to us. When the offering plate comes around, you don't hear a lot of woo-hoos in church. Oh, there's an opportunity to lose money. Now, we might think of it that way. A lot of people that don't go to church, what do they say the church is always asking for? Money. That's why they pass that offering plate. They want my hard-earned cash. That's what they're doing. Do you know the offering is actually a moment of worship in the church? That is what offering is supposed to be. Here it comes. And suddenly inside of you, you should have that feeling like, oh my goodness, I wish I had something else I could give because the offering plate's coming my way. I want to be invested in what God's doing. I want to give that. I want to give that to God. I want to pour into him. And I wish I had so much more. I wish I had so much more. That's the feeling, a cheerful giver. That's what God's looking for. Every day, start looking for a way to regift. Every day. Every day. God didn't give you 24 hours a day so you can just look at your watch and like, is it over yet? That's not why we have those minutes. He wants you to use those for the glory of God. Everything that you do all for the glory of God. God has given you an amazing life. Regift it. Please, regift it. And I don't know where you sit in life. I don't know what it could be ability. You might say, I don't have $1 to my name. That's fine. What do you have? What do you have? Well, I got some tools. Can you invest that? Can you regift that? Can you do something with that for the Lord? I only have time. That's all I got. I got nothing to do. I have time. Then there's places you could pour that time that would be a blessing to somebody else, and you can further the ministry somehow. God has given you an amazing life, all of you. Let's regift it.